What's up? Wade here, bringing you the third lecture and lesson here in the ICND 1 preparation, the test, or CCENT test 100-105. Don't have no green screen today, but that's fine, guys. So, today's lesson is what is a network? I know it's boring at the start, guys. Some of you are going to know exactly what this is, and some may not. But it's important to know, so I pulled up a website. We're going to talk about some things here. But first, we'll go over the definition that Techpedia has. I feel it's a pretty decent one. So we are going to be looking over it right quick. And there we go. So the definition is, what does a network infrastructure mean? It means network infrastructure is the hardware and software resources of an entire network that enable network connectivity, communication, operations, and management of an enterprise network. Alright, it necessarily doesn't have to be an enterprise network. It provides the communication path and service between users, processes, applications, services, and external networks, the internet. The internet is technically a network, guys. So down here, network infrastructure is typically part of a IT infrastructure found in most enterprise IT environments. The entire network infrastructure is interconnected and can be used for internal communication, external communication, which is usually the internet or somewhere else, or both. Most is going to have both. A typical network infrastructure includes network hardware, routers, switches, LAN cards. Alright, LAN cards probably should have been listed as NIC to be a little bit more. You're not going to hear in the ICND 1 it called a LAN card. It will be called a NIC, network interface card. Same thing though, but for proper term use we're going to say NIC. Wireless routers, which exist, but usually you're not going to see anything mentioned as far as wireless routers in the ICND 1. Cables. Cables probably should be listed more specifically as Ethernet. I mean, there is different types of cables. You got Ethernet, and then you got the serial cables. And Ethernet pretty much covers most of it, but then you do got the serial cable and then the console cable, as I call it, which we would talk about more. Network software, we're not going to look at that. Just know that there is network management software out there. Network software, in the case that you need to understand, is iOS, which is images of the routers and switches. Just know that firewalls do exist. There is network management software that you can run from a PC. Network services, T1 line, DSL, satellite, wireless protocols, IP addressing. IP addressing is going to be the main one. T1, DSL, and satellite, you just have to briefly know them for the ICND 1. So, with that being said, I will bring up pretty much the GNS3, and let's see if I can get my camera back up over here. There we go. So what you need to understand is basically the broad term, or the term that you really should understand between a network or in IT reference to network, is a network can be just two computers technically attached by a cable. That can be considered a network. It could be huge, it could be small, it could be just two phones hooked to each other, or well, not, they can't technically be hooked to each other, but hooked to be able to call each other running one server to manage them, and that's a network. What you need to understand, network is anything that can communicate to each other based on IT equipment, I guess is the best way to put it. But to be honest, there's more than that that can be considered in a network. to a certain extent. It just all depends. Anything that deals with Ethernet is going to be considered an IT network nowadays. Anything with fiber optics is going to be considered usually an IT network. I'm trying to think serial connectors as far as the back of routers. Any ISP network also can be considered the same. Now you can hear my computer is getting a little bit louder, and some of that is because of this GNS3 here. But what I want you to see here is I've just created some stuff here. We got PC, you've got the switches, we've got routers. This is an entire network. I mean, there could be more than PCs here. We can have several, but basically, this is a network. It's cables attached to each other. They're all communicating, and even if it's as simple as a PC being connected to a PC, it is considered even a network then. And just for reference, if you connect in a PC directly to another PC with Ethernet, it has to be a crossover cable. The two main cables you're going to learn about, and you'll learn about the third one as well. I'd say four main cables you're going to learn about, or that you may need to know about. You do need to know about fiber optic a little bit. Is you need to know about the three types of Ethernet cables. Two of them you're going to see most likely, and it's probably definitely going to be in the ICND one, or has a high possibility of being in it, is your straight through Ethernet cable and your what they call crossover Ethernet cable. You really want to know them two and understand what they work, when you use them, and what you use them to connect with in certain situations. Rollover cable mostly is always going to be in reference to something simple. The console cable is considered a rollover cable in most cases. And then you got your what they call your serial cable. Serial cable isn't really that big. Even if you got away without doing it, you still should pass the ICND1. But do understand the serial cable, DT, DC, and we'll be going over that where you can interconnect routers WAN via serial cable, which we will talk more about later in the course. So with that being said, anything that can communicate via cable, they do have to, well, wireless is also, I don't think they mentioned that, but actually wireless is also considered network nowadays with the wireless communication. I was going to say via cable, but when you talk about wireless access points and so on from there, they are considered through the airwaves, so it doesn't technically have to be cable connected due to that. Now, what I want you to understand in security environments, the biggest thing you're going to have a challenge with, and this is in real life, this ain't as much as going to be like an ICND one, is that wireless access points are the biggest challenge for security a lot of times. Always be careful, even if you go to a McDonald's or something, what you're typing in through their Wi-Fi. It basically is like an old school hub to a certain extent, so you always need to be careful and understand that a hub is easy to like intercept traffic, and some wireless access points are very easy to intercept traffic also. For passwords and etc. So always be careful with what you're connecting to and what you're actually looking up or typing in some of them places. Not saying it's highly likely, but if you get somebody skilled enough and the security or the wireless access point, basically somebody can get information that maybe you don't want them to get. That's kind of just a side note, and you will kind of learn more about that in this course a little bit. Wireless is not as big in the ICND1 as the cables are, but you just need to know that, hey, there is wireless, and there's probably types of bands, but in the ICND1 there wasn't a high amount of focus in that. It comes later, either in the second CCNA test or in the CCNP. We'll mention a little more about wireless. Although wireless does have their own courses, so you won't really see a ton unless you're taking them type courses from there. So a network can be considered many things in what they consider an IT network. In this course and in routing and switching, you're going to be dealing with a lot of this. CCNT, you're going to be talking about a little bit of everything. Like I said, not a ton in wireless, but switches, routers. Um, PC isn't really no Cisco equipment, but you need to know a little bit about PC network interface cards, how to troubleshoot from a PC, as far as maybe using telnet, ping, trace route. But if you can do those from a router, so on from there. So we see this topology, and we'll probably use it some throughout the course. Usually, I like to use um, routers. As you can see, part of this is right here. Looks like, but I'm gonna just shut all this down. But I like to use routers in the place of PCs, so people get used to commands. Plus, it's going to be more useful in the ICND, where this is an actual PC kind of over here, a virtual PC ping. But we're going to see this topology a good bit. To a certain extent, we'll probably use two main types of topologies throughout the course. This one's going to be more switch oriented to a certain extent. The other one's going to be routers. But to be honest, we're going to focus in the ICND one. We're going to focus mostly towards routers and the concepts, how everything works. We ain't going to get too much detail in some areas. Some areas, detail really don't matter in the ICND one. It's more about the concepts. Do you know what to look for? Do you know when something's working, when it's not working properly? If it's not working properly, what is most likely to be the problem? Do you know what the default of this is, the default setting of this, etc. Most of it was memorization. How does RIP base its protocol off of? How does EIGRP work? What's the difference between EIGRP and OSPF? Which one's a link state or distant vector um, protocols, or type of protocols? And so they're going to ask that. You're going to have to know what TCP, which things are, better yet, what uses TCP and maybe what uses UDP. We'll talk more about, which is based on ports. We'll talk a lot about that. Ports are in network and they're very popular. That's where it allows access to certain programs to work. And it's also used as for security measure. You can block certain ports, and access lists allows you to do that, which you will learn near the end of the course. Access list we will not be focusing a ton on. We'll just briefly talk about a little bit and how they work. Is in the ICND one. All you really have to know is how they work, what the ranges kind of are, and so it's not. You might have one question, but it's going to be a simple type question. There's just not a lot of hammering on the ACLs in the 100-105 ICND1. So we'll be working on this a good bit. So GNS3 is what we got up here. This will not be, guys, what you mostly, I say it's probably half of what you see. I'll also have a big setup lab. We're going to try to take this webcam, guys, and I'm going to see if you guys can see that we got a huge lab over here. Most of those down there are HP switches, but all of them in the middle right there all the way up to the phones there's all Cisco switches. The 6 silver ones are, actually it's 7 silver ones are layer 3 switches, which we'll use them some and keep them at layer 2. The 2 top ones is switches that are only layer 2, all of them Cisco. Of course there's 2 Cisco phones. We might boot up one during the course. And then we got some routers up there, Cisco 1841s, and then we got some more sitting up here that aren't currently racked, and then there's a 2811 inside that box, guys. So we're gonna set this back. There we go. And that is the rack that we're going to be working out of for my lab, and we'll be walking you guys with it. Like I said, I've talked about in a previous video. If you want to follow with a physical lab, if you got the money, that's what I recommend. I talked about in that video detailed of what you would need to get your CCNA full. That's the CCENT, and then the next one up, CCNA, which is you can get away with 3 routers, 2 switches, bare minimum of 2 routers and 2 switches. Um, but I recommend for to be able to go through the CCNA and to be able to do like everything without no hold back is 3 routers and 3 switches. Um, but if you're going to cut one, you want to go to 3 routers, 2 switches. If you want to cut another one, you want 2 routers and 2 switches. 3 switches, you're going to find out there's STP, Spanning Tree Protocol. It's not hit a lot in ICND 1, so that's why I say if you're going to drop one, it's the switch. ICND 2, they talk more about it. But the routers, you will want to know how they work in ICND 1, and you want to see how you dynamically learn routes through the routing protocols. If you get 2, it's going to be tough to really get the full advantage of seeing how a routing protocol works. Could you program it? Yes. Could it work? Yes. But there's some areas that you're not going to be as strong in because with 2 routers, you're pretty much directly connected. Where switches, layer 2, 2, the only reason you'd have 3, the only reason I say 3 over 2 is the whole part is Spanning Tree Protocol, but it is such a minimum in the ICND 1 that if you want to cut one and save some money, that would be where you want to go, is cutting from 1 switch down to 2. You can get 20 real cheap switches as long as they're layer 2. You want Cisco ones, 2550 or 2950s. Basically, I think it's the 2950 is the one you want. Don't worry about no layer 3 switch. All you need to know is that how to set a layer 3 switch, maybe 2 there, but I'm going to be honest, it was not in the ICND 1 at all. I don't know if it's in the CCNA, but if the only thing they're going to ask is how do you enable layer 3 on a switch, and then basically you would do IP routing. You would need to know more about the routers and how to enable IP version 6 over anything else, which is IPv unicast dash routing. Is that right? Or is that address? It's routing. Unicast routing. Yeah, unicast routing. So that is basically, if you're going to do that physical lab, that's the way you want to do it. If you use GNS3, that's no big deal, but there is some glitches, and you might see some during the course, which is no big deal, and I will explain when it's a glitch, because I have banged my head a few times and then realized that, hey, this is a glitch out of it. So this right here is actually a complex network. If you ever hear the term redundancy, it's extra cables. Basically, if one goes down, you got another path. Your network will not go down entirely. The worst case scenario is you don't have redundancy, and something goes down in your entire network, or a portion of your network goes down with it. So the key to being a good network administrator, even at the lower level, is keeping your network up as much as possible. So with that being said, networking, understand it as communication between devices. Anything that can cause communication is considered network, and you need to understand that. It's pretty much simple with simple networks. What you're going to be focusing on in the ICND 1 is basically router switches, mostly default settings, kind of how they work, how they change, how they route, how they move information between areas. Internet, you really ain't going to have to know. If you get worried and you say, oh, I've got to know so-and-so the internet, not really. All you need to know is that how to set up maybe to get to the internet in a setup, but outside of that, you're not going to get questions much about internet-related stuff. The closest thing you'll see to that is VPN, which just goes through the internet, but even then, I didn't see anything about a VPN in the ICND 1 or much anything mentioned about it. So throughout this course, we will be working on this. Um, this video will be probably one of the last about the basics, guys. So as we get deeper into this course, you better get ready to break out your notebook if you're new to networking. If you're familiar with networking, just jot down the areas that you seem weaker in and focus on them areas. If I stress something throughout the course, usually that means that it's pretty much what Cisco is wanting you to probably know based on their exams or based on overall with their equipment, or what it takes to basically be able to do the job. So get ready, as things are going to get a little bit tougher on out from here. These are just explaining these smaller things. For some people it's going to be like a duh, but some people I'm trying to explain what basically identifies as a network, what kind of devices you will be looking at, what's a connection, etc. from there. But from here on out, it's going to be now getting a little bit tougher, and we're going to get into actually discussing things that's going to affect how you do your job and affect to basically preparing for the certification. So I hope this video, guys, has been informational to you. I hope you understand what you're about to start learning here. And good luck to you guys in the future who are watching the video to preparing for these exams. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me via message on YouTube. If something is unsure, also contact me, as I can go back to the video or put up a text box and explain something that either one I misexplained or two add a little bit more detail.